Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo of the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with the Dispatchers Roundtable. This is going to be round 38, but first, as always, a word from our sponsor.
At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESInet goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? From Titletown Publishing, and available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
All right. I was able to stop it right before the open mic live intro started. The next time I do a round, next month, I will have the complete intro in there. I've been trying to work on that one for a while now. I kind of want to have like the boxing gloves come in and hit just like the logo shows, because I already have the intro music and everything for it, but I'm still building it. So thank you all for your patience, and welcome back to the Dispatchers Roundtable. This is going to be round 38. And our topic for today is breaking the stigma, a candid conversation on ADHD and 911 dispatch. But as always, quickly, this live broadcast is sponsored by InDigital, a leader next gen core services, and a big shout out to subscribers of the podcast. As always, the main podcast, and that is Within the Trenches. So thank you all for everything, because I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you who are watching, sharing, supporting, and just all of it. So thank you so very much. I'm excited for this round, and hopefully everything holds up. I was telling one of my panelists earlier that it was about 70 degrees here yesterday, and today it's like 30 now. It was snowing this morning, and it is crazy cold in this room, and it's windy. If you're able to hear it, I apologize. Hopefully you can't hear it, but it's pretty nuts outside right now. And this wall over here could potentially fall and hit me in the face. So we'll see what happens. But again, today for this round, we're going to be talking about ADHD and 911. And I want to introduce my first guest here. And she's going to give a brief overview of her public safety experience. And her name is Deb Abbey, and she is a psychiatric clinician as well as a 911 dispatcher and EMT.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so overview of my stuff in public safety. So I started dispatching technically at Six Flags when I was 18 years old, and that was in 2001, and I'm aging myself. So anyway, a couple decades later, I'm still technically a dispatcher, but while I was dispatching, I was given permission to attained my bachelor's, my master's degree while I was in downtime on midnight shift. And so I ended up changing my career mostly because I was missing my son's stuff while I was dispatching and I had shift work. So I was just looking to get away from the shift work. But I became a psychiatric clinician after about 15 years in dispatch, and it's been about another 5 years since I switched careers. So, but I became a dispatcher, technically a 911 dispatcher in 2005. And
Mhm.
then I became an EMT, I think in 2008 or 2009. And so I worked per diem as an EMT, but I was always full time as a dispatcher. So I did 911 dispatch. I would do call taking. I would also do dispatch the fire department, dispatch the police department, and I worked for a small municipality. I would say it's small, but some not compared to some. So we had 5 fire departments and a very busy police department, and yeah, so I ended up leaving on my 10-year anniversary to complete my internship as a therapist. And now I'm an ADHD clinical specialist, and it's what I study, it's what I research. And I'm also a therapy dog handler. So Buster's here with me. If you can tell me what's going on.
Oh, that was perfect right there. Oh my god.
Bus practice these things. So I have a wealth of information about ADHD, and I'm happy to answer questions, and we can move forward.
All right, perfect, awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on here and for what you do and just everything. The service, all of it that you have done and the experience. Your episode, like so, Deb and I did a podcast episode recently, and her episode is going to be coming out next week, which was so much fun. There was
Mhm.
so much information as well, and I'm excited for everyone to watch and listen to that one as well. But again, the moment that you said your dog's name and he threw his head back, like, that was just perfect. That will be a clip.
Yeah, he also just hit my caps lock button, so that's hopefully he doesn't close the
Oh,
screen.
yeah, perfect. Yes, that as well. Well, we have our next panelist. I've also had him as a guest on the podcast as well, and during that time, we were sharing his story and also his experience and journey with ADHD as well. And we're going to be getting to a lot of this, breaking down these things, what it is, and everything, how it comes to be, or just breaking it down that way. So the next panelist here is going to be Jeremy Meyer, a public safety communications leader and instructor.
Afternoon, everybody. Nice to be back. Jeremy Meyer, been dispatching since '92. I've done a whole bunch of different things from small towns to big cities. Worked over in Kuwait, set up the 911 center there. Got to work at the Olympics in 2002 as a dispatcher. Been an instructor on public safety communications since 2004 or 5. And in my most recent role, I was director of 911 for the city of Albany. I was diagnosed in actually less than a month, probably less than 2 weeks before I left for Kuwait in '04 with ADHD. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome to the both of you. And for anyone who is watching and listening, if you have any questions, please throw them in the comments, and we will go over them. A lot of the times with the roundtable, there are folks that are watching that are potentially at work as well, or they're listening. So there's not a lot of times where we will have some information pop up, but there is always something. And also, it looks like this is not showing up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been having issues lately, and that's on their side, not on the StreamYard side that we're doing right now. But either way, we're going to jump in and we're going to go ahead and do this. So I want to start with Deb, and what exactly is ADHD? I mean, you hear about it. I don't know, just everywhere, social media, the news, everything. You might have friends or family that have ADHD, but from your point of view, your perspective, like, what is it exactly? Now, does this start, in childhood? Is it developed as an adult? What is it exactly?
So what we're talking about is something it's genetic, right?
Mhm.
So they find that more times than not, and meaning like a very low percentage of people develop it after after they're born. And so, and the information that I'm gonna share right now is from Russell Barkley, who is a PhD. He does many different things. You've probably seen him streaming on different social media platforms, but Russell Barkley is one of the goats of ADHD. He's very passionate about activating or advocating for the cause and understanding and destigmatizing ADHD and medication for it. So ADHD is actually, so it's broken down to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And so one thing I want to say immediately is that this is not an attention deficit disorder. We don't have any problems paying attention to things that we're interested in. What this is an executive function disorder. And so when we say executive function disorder, so executive dysfunction, meaning anything involving your working memory and executive function, usually like, I don't know, about 6 to 7 of the major executive functions are affected when you have ADHD. And so they're looking at changing the name eventually. I'm not sure what it's going to change to, and you never know. Lots of people have different opinions about it, and so I try to like open my realm and like take in all of it. But I think the most important thing to understand is that this is not an attention deficit. And the other part I want to warn everyone is it doesn't mean that hyperactivity is not present in both inattentive type of ADHD or the hyperactive type is the only time you see it, or combined type is the only time you see it. Hyperactivity occurs in the brain. And so there's just so much information, and there's a lot of different ways that I can explain this. And so what I'll start with is, this is really something that I learned today, actually, from Russell Barkley, is that everyone has the genealogy for ADHD. Every human does, and there are traits that every single person carries. So this is really more of on a spectrum, right? And so once you meet a certain threshold on that spectrum, if you think of this like having a loss of hearing, at a certain point, they consider you to the point where you need to have a hearing aid, right? You can't hear at a normal level and you need to add a hearing aid, right?
Right.
And so with ADHD, at a certain point, your symptomology is going to be considered disordered. And so it's going to become a problem in your daily life, right? And so that's why we tell the difference between people that are like, oh, I don't know, I do that all the time. And oh, that happens to me sometimes. This is like when people are diagnosed with ADHD, which is what it's going to be called for now. When they're diagnosed with that, it is a problem every single day. There are multiple problems that come with it, and it is affecting their lives. Okay. So there are some differences in, oh, sometimes I forget my car keys, and I literally am late every single day because I'm forgetting something, you know? So I think those are the most important things to know about the title itself.
That is excellent, because I just so really quick, just a couple days ago, I simply just looked up what is ADHD, and there were so many different things, and some of them almost kind of contradicting a few spots, that I was completely confused. And I thought, well, I'm gonna leave this tab open, which I still have it open right now. But the way you explained it and everything, I love it that you're able to put it in a level that people can understand. Now, and Jeremy, I'm going to go to you here in a moment as well. But Deb, I want to ask you first. So, I guess, what are some of these symptoms? Like, what were some of the things that you noticed, or anything like that?
Okay, so we talk about ADHD, we talk about inhibition. Okay, so
Mhm.
there's this, like, right from childhood, you'll notice the kids with ADHD, they have a hard time not saying what they feel. Okay, and so sometimes that can get them into trouble, And so there's something that's going on with the DSM-5 and how we diagnose this. And so there's an age requirement in this diagnosis, and an age requirement doesn't appear anywhere else in the book. So I think that's something that they're going to address too. And I'm not sure. Again, this is all information from Russell Barkley.
Mhm.
So what I'll say is this is an inhibition and a lack of balance. Okay, so we cannot balance our emotions properly. So like we call that emotion dysregulation. Like we might be really reactive to something, and what we feel, it goes inside to outside very quickly, which is a lot of children are like that. However, the kids with ADHD really have a hard time holding in what it is that they feel or want to say. So there's a lack of inhibition, motor, verbal, cognitive difficulty in suppressing irrelevant thoughts, and there's some rapid decision making, and sometimes, thank you, Krista. Sometimes, yes, I know, I love you too. Sometimes um, it can be like this decision making is just not so good, especially when you get to about the middle school age. You end up saying things or doing things that you're like, I shouldn't have done that. I don't know if you know the Hagrid syndrome, where he's like, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. That's much like kids with ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Going on throughout life, there's and there are more. Obviously, there are more symptoms, but I think these are the most prominent. Okay, and then the restlessness, the hyperactivity, like you cannot sit still or you cannot stop thinking. Okay. I was told at one point in my life that some people without ADHD can stop thinking for more than 15 minutes. Like they just stop thinking. And I was like, and they're awake? Like,
Right. Yeah.
are they conscious? Like, are they looking at you? Like, and yes, they are, like, so I'll just say like the way that our thoughts are lined up is more like an intersection. And so all the time we have thoughts coming at us, and they could be funny thoughts like, what color is penguin poop? Or it could be more like I'm worried about this that I did in the past, and how's that going to affect my future? And what about the future? And so it all happens at once for us. So we have problems with time management, right? We have problems with impulsive decision making. We have problems with we have problems with motivation, being able to like really take a step forward and get to the task that we want to do, usually because we're avoiding a part of it that we don't understand, we failed at it before, or we're not sure how to organize it, right? So there's a lot of these different ways that it affects us, and everyone really has a different kind of ADHD. So one thing that Russell Barkley said in the training I was in today, which kind of blew my mind, is that there are no types. This is all the same disorder, and you will experience different parts of this disorder. You might be combined in certain areas. You might be inattentive in certain areas. You might be hyperactive in certain areas. It really depends on where you are in your life, what time it is in your life, and how your life is going for you at the time. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. I could talk about this for several hours straight with no one interrupting me. So someone just put a hand up or something and be like, okay, Deb, that's enough.
No, this is good. This is exactly the type of information that we're looking for here as well. And just so that people know who are watching and listening, if you are watching over here on either Facebook, YouTube, X, or LinkedIn, if LinkedIn is going, I'm not sure if it's still going up there or not, but it looks like there's a couple bots in the comments right now. So I'm going to delete those, but anybody else, if you want to comment or you have any questions, please throw it in the comments, and we will get to that as well. Now, going over to Jeremy, what I want to ask you, and Deb, I want to get your take on this as well. But Jeremy, first for you, what was your experience, or what has your experience been like with ADHD in dispatch, or public safety as a whole?
Well, I didn't get diagnosed until 2004, so 8 years after I got into it. I didn't find, when I'm working in the PSAP as a call taker or as a dispatcher, it bothering me or affecting me too much. It was the routine stuff that when you work for a department, when it's just you and you're acting as basically the front desk person and all that, I would have problems with that stuff. But taking a 911 call, getting people out and all that, not a problem. It was that routine, mundane, slow-paced stuff that I was having problems with. And actually, just like Deb, I love Dr. Barkley. I follow him. He's current, he's relevant. And I like that because the traditional ways of getting therapy, counseling, or support for ADHD, that stuff just doesn't work for me. And I don't think it works for a significant amount of us because, we will be on the wagon for a while and then something happens and we fall off. So none of that stuff is able to stick. Some things work a little bit for me, like I color code everything. Even when I'm making up stuff for the dispatcher that I post, if it's important, I make sure it stands out and stuff like that. I love the role as a director because I could have multiple screens going on and basically doing multiple projects at once. Do this for a half hour, hop on and do something else. So I kept my mind going. With my ADHD, especially as an adult, if my mind is not occupied, if it's not engaged, it says, fine, I'm going to sleep, and I get tired, which was the total opposite as a kid when I was just hyperactive because I wasn't diagnosed, where I was that what you would consider a stereotypical ADHD kid. I was all over the place, physically, mentally, verbally. I was just, out there. The hyperactiveness has gone away a little bit as I got older, but I'm still fidgety. But nowhere near as bad as when I was a kid.
So for me to understand a little bit better, as you were saying in dispatch, or while multitasking and everything, you are, you're focused. It didn't affect any, or there was no impact, right? But the everyday mundane rather, things were ones that were hard for you. So just in the scenario that you were giving, if you're working up front, right, and you're at let's just say small PD, it's just you that's there working 8 or 12 hours or whatever by yourself, and you have someone walking in to, let's just say, file a complaint or do something with I'm there's a lot of places that still do this, but when I first started dispatching, we would have people come in and we would give out bicycle permits to be at a park. Like they needed something like that. So stuff like that is that what you mean as well? Like the kind of the everyday thing, people coming in, it was a, it was a little harder to concentrate, or what do
Yeah,
you, just so that I can understand
it
better?
was the office administrative type
Mhm.
stuff. Um,
Because it's not as
I would just,
stimulating, you mean?
yeah, because
Okay.
I would forget about it, and I would forget about it because then you get a 911 call. Distraction comes in, you totally forget about that stuff. Um, and that can be hard. And it wasn't until about 5, 6 years ago that I really started working on what I was uh, taught to call my negative tracks in my head, my beating myself up. And I was horrible with that. I worked at a center and I would screw up the admin stuff and I would be cursing myself out under my breath to the point where my coworkers thought I was talking smack about them. And I
Oh
had to
man.
tell my supervisor, no. I said, I'm beating myself up for my stupid mistakes. Uh, you know, it's not 100% gone, but it's like 90% better than it was because I would beat myself up all the time. And it wasn't an environmental thing. Supportive schools, supportive professionals in the schools, supportive mother, brother. Um, I wasn't called stupid, dumb, lazy, or anything like that. So these negative soundtracks were just genetically embedded into me. Um, I am thankful because I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that support in people not saying those things to me. Deb talked about it being genetic. I believe it is. My father was alcoholic. He was extremely, very, very abusive. Luckily, I think because of my age, I, wasn't a victim of that. But I really think the alcoholism was self-medicating. And I was also lucky he wasn't in my life either. But, the alcohol was probably his self-medicating. He probably had ADHD, so.
Was he ever just, and if you don't mind me asking, do you know if there was at one point ever that he was diagnosed? I mean, it kind of sounds like
No,
it wasn't,
no,
but
it wasn't even really anything that you could really be diagnosed when I was in elementary school,
Hmm.
you know. And even if you were, it was, here's Ritalin. There was no real therapy out there except for maybe cognitive stuff. So no, with him being born in the 40s, no, he was never diagnosed. I don't think he ever knew it. But
Now, you mentioned how, there was a lot of, kind of beating yourself up, right? And when you did this happen still at any point, um when you were diagnosed, after you were diagnosed, did you still go through any of that where you were kind of beating yourself up?
Yeah, it was 2004 that I was diagnosed, and I think maybe 2018, maybe probably more likely 19 is when I really started working on, when those negative things come into my head, stopping them. You're going, well, no. I still, once in a blue moon, it happens, and then I catch it and stuff. But yeah, I would go off the handle at myself for stupid stuff.
So before we go back over to Deb to get her experience as well, what was some of the, I guess, some of the impact of having ADHD while being in dispatch?
I think the impact really was, I don't know if boundaries would be right, but not good at playing the politics. I will politely, but still I will speak my mind to bosses, to chiefs, to mayors. That's gotten me into some hot water. I do it for right reasons, supporting my team, because that is what it's supposed to be done like, or whatever. So it wasn't to be a jerk or whatever. I just didn't have, and still a lot of times don't have those filters that you really need to play politics in any type of leadership role.
Well, I'm glad though that either way that you're able to, express that passion, because those folks will now know, like, listen, I I really, believe in these certain things, and I'm going to be backing up my team. So I can see where, even though you were getting into, some hot water, there was still some praise there
Yeah.
to show, because of, you being open and honest and showing that passion. So I applaud you for that there as well. Now, going back to Deb, what about yourself? What about your experience with ADHD in dispatch, or as an EMT, just in public safety as a whole? What kind of impact has there been for you?
Honestly, once I found out I had ADHD, it was later in my life, at early 30s. I think it was at some point my psychologist looked at me and said, "Deb, did anybody ever tell you you have ADHD?" And I was like, "Huh, what?" so so for me, after I read it, it felt so much better. I read the diagnosis. I think I was getting my my bachelor's degree in psychology at the time, and I read the diagnosis for it, and I felt so much better. I was like, oh, I'm not just stupid. And so of course not, but at the same time, when I was in dispatch, I felt so alive. Like it felt
Mhm.
like I fit there. I fit, like I finally found something I could do, right? And so a life of ADHD is like when you're growing up, a lot of times negative self-talk comes from things like that we don't even pay attention to, that they're like, you're moving again. You're sitting, so you have to go sharpen your pencil again. You have to go to the bathroom again. Are you okay? Are you sick? Right? Or it's like, if you don't stop shaking your leg, I'm going to send you to the principal's office. I'm not kidding. Like these things happen to us, and we're
Wow.
like, I cannot concentrate without moving a part of my body. Like
Yeah.
knowing myself now, I know my brain is seeking dopamine all the time. It's like, not enough. Where are we going to find it? Let's find the more interesting thing to do, right? And interesting, by the way, is not always healthy. Interesting is stimulating, but interesting can also be very unhealthy.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting. to speak negatively to yourself because you have to pay attention to it. If you don't listen to it, you won't learn from it, right? And that's kind of how our brains set ourselves up, right? But
Right.
it's also not accurate. And so we're kind of, without even knowing it, I think these things come at us. And so a lot of this, when I first started in the agency I was with for a very long time, I mean, I was terrified to make a mistake. I knew that I would forget something. I was terrified the entire time I was going to forget something very important. And I think that's from a life of having a problem with my working memory. Like I would be in the middle of something. Sometimes I'll put like my coffee in the fridge and I put my creamer back in the cabinet, and then like I'll put my cereal in the bathroom. And it's like, what am I doing? Right? Like so
Yeah.
like sometimes I do stuff like that. And it kind of scares me. Like, am I paying attention? Right. And I don't trust myself. But instinctually, I was able to always make sure that people were safe. And I had that, I don't know, I must have had that wherewithal because of my need to survive and my ability to adapt to what I was doing. And
Mhm.
I think that's what made me hopefully a good dispatcher. You know, I was told there while I was there and after I left that I was a good dispatcher, so I'm gonna take the word for it.
Yeah.
You never know. Everybody's got their opinions, right? So
Right.
but what I think it really when it really hurt me was that double check all the time. I would triple check warrants, triple check file ones. And there was one time in my career I missed a file one. And I'm sorry, file one is in Connecticut, it's a stolen vehicle.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I missed a file one, and I was very pregnant. And I think I said this on the other podcast, but I was very pregnant, and I just out of routine flipped by the first screen, went to the second screen, didn't see it. Eventually I read it out. I said it was clear. I went back and checked it again, and I said, oh my gosh, that's not clear. And then I immediately broadcasted like operator error. Are you safe? Right. Like, and sure enough, I think I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I don't think anyone got hurt. So, and I had some coaching from my lieutenant after that, and he was very kind to me, but also like, do you know what you did? And I was like, yes. Why did you do that? And I said, did you ever just do something really dumb? And he went, yeah, I have. I was like, thank you for understanding.
Yeah.
And he goes, you gonna do it again? I was like, never.
Yeah.
Right. And sure enough, it's
Believe me.
quadruple check now every time I do something like that. But thankfully, that's all. That only happened once, thankfully. But I look back and think like to myself, like I must have been good at it because there weren't things that happened afterwards that had an aftermath, you know, like so. But I still have this imposter syndrome
Mm.
that I'm not good at anything. In high school, my guidance counselor told me not to take. Yeah, you can try to take your SATs, but I don't think you're gonna make it into a college. And
What?
I have 2 master's degrees, and I've never gotten a B in college. Like what? Right? Like
Have you reached
so
back out to this person to be like, "Hey, yo, check this out"?
she was older. I think she was due to retire, and I don't think
Oh, okay.
I forget her name, and I don't think she meant anything by it. I think what she was trying to tell me was, I don't want to see you feel like you're failing again.
Mm.
And she's not wrong. I don't think I would have done good at the SATs. So she might have been right about that, but
She
not
knew
good.
something.
Yeah, and college changed over time, you know, so in her fairness. But the other thing is like what I'll say, like being a clinician and looking at people that I know a lot of people in public safety, right? And so every other person I look at, I'm like, do you have ADHD? And they're like, yes. Why? I'm like, and you do, and you do, and you do, and you do. And I think that we thrive in this career. And I think that under high pressure, we don't use our emotions to make decisions. It just happens. That's
Right.
that rapid decision making. So if you have it where you say, I know how to prioritize this. I know which comes first. I know I have to focus on safety, officer safety, public safety, right? And if you know that immediately and you make that decision and you have ADHD, you're good at it. That's your career, right?
Hmm.
I think it's the same in EMS, right?
Yeah.
It's the same in fire, same in law enforcement, right? So when they are able to make that rapid decision and know it's a good one and be confident in it, that's when you know, like with ADHD, you know you found the place to be.
Do you feel like in a way, and do you feel like you maybe had a slight advantage in like
Yep.
triaging in that sense
Yep.
as well?
Yes. Yes, I do, because I think that although this is a mental illness, this is a disorder. I
Mhm.
have disordered thinking. I have a disordered brain, okay? And I think what's going to happen is it's going to turn into a medical disorder, but who knows? So what what so it's not okay. I don't want to make it out to be something good, right? But
Right.
at the same time, and I think like people have thrown this word around, superhero, right? Like ADHD is my superpower, right? And Jeremy, we talked about this,
Yeah.
where a lot of people might look at that and say, this is not a superpower. Are you insane? Like, how could you say that?
Mhm.
But when I'll tell you that when like my type of ADHD, the way that I was in that environment, the ability to move from this to that to this to that to this to that, and move my foot and my hand at the same time and talk to two different people, that's the only way I can describe it. I was thriving in that environment.
Wow.
And I still like really highly interactive environments. I like to be stimulated. So I like people. The one thing that really worried me when I went to go into therapy was like, how am I going to sit still for that long and talk to people? And just listen. I went to one of my professors and I said, Dr. Stacy, I can't stop talking. she said, oh, honey, you have to get to gab. and she said, it's okay. Some therapists do, and some people love it. It's just got to find your people, and I'm blessed to have like a full clientele of people that trust me, and thankfully they trust me, I think. And and I think they've made progress, and there are people that have come and gone from therapy, and so
Mhm.
I know hopefully they're feeling better, and hopefully I'm helping.
Well, this is a good thing and also refreshing to hear because I can only imagine that there are, a lot of folks that might, be watching this, whether it be live or in the replay, which, a lot of times with this program, people are watching more of the replay than watching it live, that they're probably hearing the both of you talk about this and think, damn, I'm not alone. Like this, there is there's a silver lining to what it is that I'm going through, and now, excuse me, I know that there's more to this, and that's why these conversations and this program is, really important for us to be talking about things like this because there's got to be a few people out there that are probably afraid to talk about it, which kind of segues into the next question here is, and this is for either one of you to jump in, but how do you think the fear of judgment impacts people's willingness to discuss ADHD openly?
Mm,
I definitely understand it and see it. I don't go and never have gone to people above me and say, hey, I have ADHD. Um, I was out of the industry for a short while and I requested accommodations. And, within 5 months, I was outsourced. I can understand the fear. Yes, ADA and a whole bunch of other stuff, but there's so many laws out there to protect employees from discrimination and abuse and bullying, yet it's still rampant.
Mhm.
So I can understand, that fear, and then also being judged by others. With that being said, though, as an instructor, I've run several dispatch academies. I've done a lot of training throughout the Northeast. And yeah, I will bring it up during training. I will bring it up to my dispatchers, to my supervisors that, yeah, I have it. So this is why I need you to follow up your conversation with me with an email.
Mhm.
I explain why. Um, you know, um, it can be difficult. The big problem is, everybody jumping onto, it's the in thing to say you have. And that is harmful to those of us that have been diagnosed with it. Um, I've heard way too often, stuff like, everyone has ADHD or I have ADHD, yet they've never bothered to get diagnosed. And undiagnosed ADHD can, be a problem, personal life and career. So if you think you have it, get diagnosed. There's so many, ways and places to do it. I went to the ADD Center of Western Mass in 2004 in January. I spent 4 or 5 hours going through the whole evaluation, and then got the report. It's important, if you have it, to get diagnosed. How you want to deal with it afterwards, I'm not going to say that you should do medication or not. That is an individual choice. For me, it helps. It is not a cure-all. You're not going to take Ritalin. You're not going to take Adderall and boom, everything, you're neurotypical. No, it helps. So by making statements like, oh, I have ADHD just because you forgot your coffee at home that morning. No, it's just like saying somebody has OCD. No, unless it is debilitating to your life, no, you don't. When you're washing your hands 20 times before you leave the bathroom, that's OCD. So, and people also need to realize that, by making these statements, those of us who are diagnosed, we're felt like our condition, or whatever you want to call it, is not valid.
So what you're saying is, like, every day there are folks who kind of joke about it, like,
Yeah,
oh, I've got this or whatever, but that's offensive in a way.
yeah,
That's what you mean?
yeah. So that's another reason why people may not speak up, because they don't want to be invalidated for having ADHD.
So
it's important to get diagnosed, and getting diagnosed by the proper people, not online. Preferably not by your primary or general. You want a psychiatrist, or a psych nurse practitioner. Somebody who's got experience, expertise, specialized training in ADHD. And that's why when I went in 2004, I found a center that deals with nothing but ADHD in children and adults. And then I got re-diagnosed in 2014 and did that through Easter Seals. And they had, people that's all they deal with is ADHD.
now, before I go over to Deb, I want to ask you really quick, as you were, I guess, kind of approaching the time where you had, received your diagnosis and everything, as we're talking about this fear of judgment and all, was there any moment that you yourself, Jeremy, did you feel embarrassed? Like, did you, like, I don't really want to talk about this, or like, how
No,
was that for you?
no, I never did, and probably because, once I was like, okay, I'm going to go get diagnosed. I realized I've had this since at least elementary school, if not earlier. The evaluation is a long process, and I knew going into it that I had to be wide open, honest about everything as far back as I could remember, which was first grade. I was that horrible kid in first grade and second grade that would have a tantrum in school and literally throw kids' books at the teacher. So I was open about everything from that point on until, what was I, 34, 35? Everything about education, personal life. I was 100% open about my history, because that is a big chunk of it. Questionnaire, very, very long questionnaire. And then they want to know stuff like, other conditions. I had anxiety and depression. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I was also a compulsive overeater. So there's a lot to it. When I got the second one, the doctor forgot to close the blinds, and I was kind of being a wise ass. And literally a wild turkey walked by. I went, ooh, turkey. Well, of course, he's thinking, okay, great, It was 100% a joke. It wasn't me going, oh, squirrel, or oh, shiny
Right.
apple. I was trying to be funny.
Yeah.
The blinds got closed right after that.
Well, and you know what? And this is good as well. That's why I wanted to ask you all of this. And Deb, I wanna ask you the same thing as well. But before I get your answer for that, what I want to do is I want to add up here on the screen a question that came up in the audience here, and the question is: are we dispatchers diagnosed with ADHD attracted to this type of work?
I think so. I think it's stimulating. Emergency services is stimulating. Once I said this before, but our brains are lacking access to dopamine. Okay, so they're lacking the access. It's lacking the access to that. It's going to do anything to find it.
Mhm.
So sometimes that's waking us up in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's really focusing on negative things, really getting anxious, really um, worrying about a lot of different things. And if you don't have the wherewithal to control that and to reframe those thoughts, then it ends up taking over. So, Buster, goodness me, sir. Sorry.
No, you're good.
The squeakies. So I think what's really important is that we do have, like, to say that we do have these talents that are there that other people do not have. And so I'm not sure if everybody here has heard of hyperfocus. I call it hocus pocus hyperfocus
Mhm.
because it is really like a magic spell that I go under where I just do that for hours. Like whatever it is I'm focused on, everything else kind of goes awry. So it's not great, because I'm not paying attention to anything else, but I'm completely fixated on one thing and I will not stop until that thing is done. Um, and so I think most importantly, remembering that, like, well, just to inform you all, there are big industries now that are kind of headhunting for people with ADHD. They're looking for people with OCD. They're looking for people with autism, and that's a big. It's a topic in industrial and organizational psychology, and they study it. But they're looking at the neurodivergent people, and they're going, "Oh, you know how to hyperfocus." Right? And ooh, you're really good at like really narrowing down everything you need to categorize things. And that's something that people with autism do. So I think it's yeah, bipolar and fire, that's funny. Yeah. So I think it's important to say that it's not all bad, but at the same time we have to be mindful when we are in that hyper focus. You'll forget to pay bills, you will forget about appointments, right? And that's a part of the reason why people say this all the time about ADHD, where we're like, oh, we have an appointment at 2 p.m. so we can't do anything else that day. It's because we usually are late for things. We have time blindness, or this lack of awareness in time, and that's because it's not visual. We can't see it with our eyes. So so our working memory kind of categorizes it in like it's not important. If I can't see it, it's not important, right? Even if I
Mhm.
do see it, if it stays in the same place all the time, still not important, right? So yeah, the time blindness kind of gets in the way, and so then at 2 p.m. when we have our appointment, we're like, we're late.
Well, so there's another question that came in here, and it says, "Is there any research making a connection between trauma and PTSD and developing ADHD symptoms?"
So physical trauma, yes. So if you have trauma to the right side of your prefrontal cortex, we know that you can then develop symptoms of ADHD. There are other comorbidities in medical illnesses as well, such as epilepsy or seizures.
Mhm.
There is also, I just read about this morning, I'm sorry. But so I think the answer is yes. However, the post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm not sure if that's been studied yet. So I know there's comorbidity with post-traumatic stress disorder, mostly because, so like if we think about ADHD, we're talking about people with a very high risk for a low life expectancy. We have a higher risk for low life expectancy than people that smoke or people people that are reckless drivers, or people that are or for obesity, they have a higher life expectancy than we have. We have the lowest. ADHD does. It's 11 years less. Okay, so when we talk about what was the last thing we
It says
the trauma.
Mhm.
PTSD, right? We're talking about people that are high risk takers. Okay, so at that point, it's not even high risk taking, like saying, "Ooh, that's gonna be fun. It's gonna adrenaline. Like I'm gonna jump off the mountain." That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about we text when we drive. Like when I say we, I'm just including myself, not because I text when I drive, but because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm judging. Okay,
Right,
so
yeah.
please don't text and drive. But we
Yeah.
think we can do things like that. We're not paying attention all the time when we're on the road, and so it increases our chances of car accidents. Okay, it increases our chances, unfortunately, of substance use, because a lot of ADHD is untreated, and that creates a very poor view of ourselves. Right? Lester, this is a serious conversation. Okay, and so it lightens everything, right? So when we look at all of these different risk factors that we have, yes, post-traumatic stress disorder is probably comorbid as happening at the same time as ADHD, because we're exposed to and more likely to have families that have hard things happen and have sad things happen, right? And so then we'll be more likely to be exposed to that. Also, like, people with ADHD normally have parents with ADHD. So if you have ADHD, you've been diagnosed, you've had it since you were born. Aside from a head trauma, you've had it since you were born. This isn't developed in parenting,
Mhm.
and it's not something that comes later. You've had it since you were born. Okay. And so these things can happen, and there's a lot that comes with it. And is it action or reaction, cause or correlation? Like, we don't know yet. We can say that these two things are related, but we can't say which came first, the chicken or the egg,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes.
Maybe probably too much. Sorry.
No, hey, too much information is always good
Mhm.
because, this person says here, will this be on replay? I need to share it with so many people, so this is good that it's going out there. And yes, the question to your question, yes, it'll be available for replay as soon as we go off air. It already starts going again. And if you're on LinkedIn, because it's not on there, I apologize, but I will post it on there as well so that everybody can see it too. So that original question, um, going for you, because we got Jeremy's side of it, but for you, Deb, it was, how do you think the fear of judgment impacts people's willingness to discuss ADHD openly?
So I think that this comes down to medication.
Mhm.
I think if there were no medication linked to helping ADHD, then people would have no problem saying that they have it, right? So, and I think that happens for different things, like, oh, I broke my arm, oh, I broke my toe, right? Well, this is a circumstance that's out of their control. It happened, and people don't judge you for it because accidents happen, right?
Mhm.
But when you talk about something that is a mental illness, or like disordered thinking, anxiety, depression, anything like that, it is affecting your body. Your whole body is affected by things like this. But people have a very hard time accepting that this is just because they can't see the injury, that it's not an injury, right? And so I'm not saying mental illness is an injury. It's not. We think that trauma might be an actual injury to the brain, and that
Mhm.
ADHD might actually be a medical illness, but we'll get there. But I also think it's important to say that the stigma comes around the substances. Okay. And so these substances at one time were abused. But I'm going to make a solid point here. And it's that people with ADHD, when they take medication, a lot of times they say to themselves 3 hours later, I think I forgot my medication. I'm not sure if I took it today. So it's not creating an addiction. We see that in research too. We see
Mhm.
that it's not worsening an addiction. Addiction comes from childhood stress and trauma. This is something that Dr. Gabor Mate goes over pretty religiously all the time when he trains people that work in mental illness, right? So a lot of addiction stems from there. So what I'm saying is, if you have ADHD, somebody that has ADHD, and they've now abused their psychostimulants. This is because of their stress and trauma. This is not because they have ADHD and they need more and they need more and they need more. generally, they're able to find in research that you are much less likely to abuse substances with proper use of ADHD stimulant medication, meaning you are 6 times more likely to become a substance user and self-medicate if you are not properly treated with medication for ADHD as a child. And that's not to say that every child with ADHD needs medication. Again, everyone is different. Every ADHD is different. It's all over the place, right? However, it depends on how much of a problem it is for that child to fit into the normal thing of society, right? Like, so if you don't want your child to take ADHD medication and you're fine with homeschooling them, and that's what you want to do, more power to you. Great, right? But we have a public school system that has rules for respect, safety, responsibility. And in order to meet those needs, a lot of their inhibition isn't there. They're not able to make those decisions. And so they just get in trouble all day instead. Instead of being medicated and instead of coming over that stigma, kids are now acting out all day and getting in trouble all day with when they could be medicated and they could be to a place where they're like, "Oh, I feel better about myself because I'm not in trouble all day.
Right.
I'm making better decisions. I have inhibition now." Right?
Oh, man.
And I'll say one more thing about ADHD medication. I didn't take it until I was 39. I was starting my PhD program. It took me 6.5 hours to read a 20-page paper, which is embarrassingly long. Okay. And I was interested. My second master's degree is in forensic psychology. It's an interesting topic. Okay. So,
Hmm.
so it was not that it was not interesting. It was that I could not focus. And so I finally went to my primary care. I said, listen, 6.5 hours. And he was like, okay, we're going to try the Adderall. Right. So I'll tell you, and I'll use the terms of a guy that I know. He explained this as it was an emotional moment for me. The first time I took psychostimulant medication, it was an emotional moment for me because I finally felt like I got it. I finally felt like the whatever piece was missing for me is now here. So I think if we're breaking the stigma, we're sharing that, first of all, there's a lot of research about ADHD, okay? 12 to 1,500 research papers a year, okay? Dr. Russell Barkley is reading 35 to 40 pages. I'm sorry, 35 to 40 research papers, which are 20 pages each. So what about like 800 something a year or a week? I'm sorry, 800 pages a week. He's reading about ADHD. This is rapidly developing. We're learning more and more every day. You cannot be diagnosed by a brain scan. You can't. Okay. Just so everyone knows, you cannot have your brain scanned and find out. Okay. So if anybody tells you that, don't pay for it. Okay. That's not how this works. It is,
Right.
we don't have scans that see it. It is too finite, okay, to be able to identify in most people. Some people you can see it, but you would have to have a before and an after. You'd have to have this to compare to this, and you don't have that when you're having a brain scan, right? So, so what I want to what I just read Woody's comment. But what I want to focus on is that medication is helpful if that's your choice. Like Jeremy said, everyone is different and it is your choice, right? And so if you feel it's right for you or you feel it's right for your child, make that decision for them. Try to release that stigma that it's dangerous because it is one of the safest medications shown to be in research studies. It's one of the safest medications in mental health. It's one that we know. We know that when we give it to someone, it helps them. We know they have ADHD then, so it's to me it's very sad that people don't talk about it because of this stigma, because of this medication tied to it. And there are a lot of doctors, physicians, and I think Jeremy was talking about how getting diagnosed by the right person. It's important that that person knows what ADHD is now, not what it
Right.
was in 1980, because it's changed. What we know about it has changed, right? In the past 2 years, it's changed. So it's important that you pay attention to if they know what they're doing. And they might think that they do, and they're not lying. They just are. They're just not updated. That's all.
Man, so this just listening to you talk about all of this, I wasn't even thinking about the medication part. It was more so thinking about, kind of like just as an example for myself when I was in dispatch and I was struggling with some of those calls, and it was more so that being afraid that someone would think that I was weak, for asking for help, and then finally just not giving a shit and saying, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about this. I'm gonna share it and continue on. That part of the stigma, that fear of someone thinking that I was weak, not so much any medication that I might have to take, I don't know, for any reason is what I'm saying. So this part of it, this is eye opening as well, because I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting for you to mention that part of it, that a lot of people might have a fear because of whatever medication might come with it. That people might be like, "Oh, you're on medication," which hearing you say it and me saying it out loud, I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, that makes sense." That someone would feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's heavily influenced by the media.
Hmm.
Media's gonna say whatever they want to get your views, right? And so, they don't have facts, that's not research. And sometimes they might share research studies, but it's legal for them to just say part of the research study and not the whole thing.
Hmm.
So they might focus on something, but if you don't have the wherewithal to be able to read an entire research study, I wouldn't rely on what the media is saying about it because they don't either.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. It's always something to question as well when stuff is coming out. Now, the next question that I have here, and we're already an hour in, but we're going to be going over because I've got three more questions here to go over. So looking over to you, Jeremy, what are some ways, and Deb, I want your opinion on this as well. But starting with Jeremy, what are some ways that organizations can create a more inclusive and supportive environment for individuals with ADHD?
I'm going to take it from the stance of when people are being trained.
Mhm.
Um, don't be using the trigger words. Dumb, lazy. Why aren't you getting this? Whether they have ADHD or not, that is not going to help anybody succeed. Um, it's going to make it a lot harder. So just, treat people when you're training, whether it's at an academy or in a CTO on the job program, um, with respect and dignity. And if they do decide to bring it to an individual's attention that they have ADHD, shut up about it. It's not your job or your business to spread the word. If the trainee or a coworker decides to tell you something, it's in confidence. They want it to be confidential. Let them decide who to tell and why.
Well, as a director though, or as a person who's working, at an emergency communications center, what are some of those ways that, to implement or putting some programs, or maybe not even just some programs, but maybe just some information basically, so that you can bridge that gap through the communication to understand, what are some of those ways to make it more inclusive and supportive?
Yeah. Well, first, having been at the department since October, and really, it's stuff like this. I know Tracy Eldridge is looking at doing some type of course or program or whatever on ADHD. Getting the word out. Not saying you have ADHD when you haven't been diagnosed and stuff. Just respect your colleagues, your coworkers. People should get trained. You want to call it sensitivity training or whatever it is, fine. But educate your people about ADHD. What it is, what it isn't. And if somebody decides to, say, yes, I have it, as a leader, supervisor, CTO, help them with what they think might make it easier for them to do the job and be successful. Back when I started, 10 codes, we had 99 10 codes. I had a laminated piece of paper with the most common ones highlighted because there was just no way I was going to remember them. And I kept that at the position every time I worked. So let them have their cheat sheets and job aids. And if that's going to help them, then, go for it. Work with them if they don't know ways, take the time in between calls. I've worked in centers, where you're getting, 120,000 calls a year. You're still downtime. So look it up on the internet. What you can do to help the person. As somebody who was in a director position in an administrative position in the past, it's about open line of communication, trust, and just educating people. It's very hard to like put a policy in place. It's like there's things like no gossip, things that people can sign and say we won't gossip and stuff like that. That's not enforceable, and it wouldn't pass the union. Any union would shut that down. So it's from that point, it's hard. So you just have to work with your people, and if you hear something or are told something, keep it in check.
That makes perfect sense. And going over to Deb, the same question. What are some ways that organizations can create a more inclusive and supportive environment for individuals with ADHD? But I also want to add, for those, there's folks that are out there that might want to create some courses or whichever that have to do with this, with ADHD or anything like that. Are there any dangers for doing something like that for someone who's creating it who is not a clinician?
I think there's a lot of coaches out there. Just a reminder, things that you
Mhm.
see from coaches. I'm not saying that they all don't know what they're doing, because some of them take their jobs very seriously, and I learn
Mhm.
from them. I
Right.
think that they are very dedicated. But I see ADHD coaches saying very destructive and terrible things to people and not fully understanding and kind of regurgitating information they've seen on a podcast or something, trying to get more followers or get more information. So be careful of coaches. I would say if they're giving you skill-based intervention, then that's probably helpful. But if it's not helpful for you, it's not going to help. It'll help half for the other. So it
Mhm.
depends on the person. So um, I would say if you're developing a training, you should probably have, just so that, I mean, at that point you're taking liability. I'm going to teach you how to handle this, right? And if something goes awry and someone says, well, I've developed, a substance use issue because this person trained us that we can't do this or we have to do that. Just be careful of
Mhm.
what you're putting out there for people, because I'm an ADHD clinical specialist. I've been specializing in this for only 2 years right now. So I don't think it's appropriate for me to make a training for it. Right. And as a person with 2 master's degrees and lots of research done with ADHD, I still don't think it's appropriate. Um, will I start to build something for maybe people to understand ADHD and see just more information about it? Maybe. But when it comes down to like actually training people on how to intervene with it or how to give accommodations for it, I would just be careful. Um, when we talk about interventions and accommodations, one thing we know with ADHD is that people need fidgets. Okay, so to concentrate on something, to hold still, right? And so I'll say like lots of people in dispatch are probably scrolling through their phones as a fidget, right? And so I would just be careful, because a phone is a distraction. It's not a fidget. It's taking you fully off of what you're doing, right? And so it needs to be something in your secondary awareness. We have primary awareness and secondary awareness. And with ADHD, that's a very strong difference. Okay. So you're talking about, am I paying attention to one or the others? Okay. Like, is my attention fully focused on what I'm listening to, or is it in my secondary awareness where I think that I'm distracting myself enough to concentrate, but I'm not, right? And I know that can be confusing, but with ADHD, we need something in our secondary awareness in order to concentrate, because we have to have two things going at once. Okay, so that's why fidgets work for people. It's in their secondary awareness, but as soon as somebody else can hear it, see it, or it pulls away from your own attention to what you're paying attention to, then it's considered a distraction. Okay.
Mhm.
So fidgets are one thing. And to say like they can provide fidgets, it's like, well, you're adults, you can buy your own. They're $3. But could they could they provide them, sure. Like, could they give you different kinds of seating? They have ADHD chairs that's actually like almost like a console, looks like a console underneath the chair, and you put your knees on like the little stool underneath your chair, and you can go back and forth and swing back and forth, right? And so that's part of it. Another one is the bouncy ball chair. That
Oh, okay. That I've seen. Yes.
that's magical. Okay. The other thing is putting an elastic band underneath like the rolly chair or whatever, because dispatchers take our chairs seriously. Like we are like these are the ergonomic queens of
Right.
the world, right? So chairs are another thing. But I think the elastic on the chair, those are accommodations. The other accommodation I would say, people I've seen TikToks and stuff where people are like, oh, do I get a disability accommodation for my time blindness? No. No. So time blindness is when we lose track of time,
Mhm.
right? And it'll just go by. And we're like, "Oh, I have to be there." We also can't measure it correctly, right? So it's like, "Oh, well, I have to be there at 2:30. So it takes 5 minutes to get there, so I'm leaving at 2:25." So you look at your clock sitting in your house at 2:25 and go, "Okay, I got to leave." But you don't get out to your car until 2:30. And then you're 5 minutes late, right? And so it's like and it adds on to that too, right? So people are saying, well, I'm going to be late every day because I have ADHD. No, you need to set your alarm earlier. Sorry. These are accommodations that, yes, if they were out of your control and there were no skill-based interventions, then yes, I do believe in that, right? But if there are skill-based interventions that you need to put in place and make sure that you are successful, those are things that you need to take care of. That's my clinical opinion. Okay. So like when we have something that's like, oh, but I'm late every day because I have time blindness. But okay, if you have time blindness, here's my recommendation: get some hourglasses and set your hourglasses up to be able to watch them drain the time, right? So you see that visual effect of, so hourglasses, they sell them in sets that are like hour, half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, 15 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. You will watch the time go by, right? And you'll be like, ooh, oh, I'm down to 3. Oh, I gotta go, right? Like, and you start to watch that time shrink
Yeah.
visibly, because our occipital lobe is more active than our prefrontal cortex, which is our timing, sequencing, and selecting is our prefrontal cortex. Our occipital lobe is visual, right? So we have visual aids for things, okay? So that's another accommodation. And I think that's something that does come up in social media. So I kind of wanted to address it.
No, that is good because some of that stuff I have not seen, and now I'm going to go looking for a lot of that stuff too, just basically to educate myself because I know folks who have been diagnosed with ADHD. However, we've never had like a conversation in or I haven't learned more. So this is good for myself personally too to learn more and understand because it's what I want to do and I want others who are watching this to be able to understand as well. And if
Mhm.
it's someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD and is afraid to talk about it or maybe even go to attempt to speak to someone for a diagnosis or something, I want them to be able to watch this and see that it is okay and that you can go to seek help and not feel embarrassed or anything like that, that there are folks out here that are dealing with the same thing and that they won't feel alone. That's what all of this is about. So I'm glad that the both of you are here, that we're having this conversation. And the I'll say this really quick. The most recent comment that had come in, I put it on the screen while you were talking, and I didn't mean to throw it up there to throw you off or anything, but you were definitely focused on what you were saying, so it didn't throw you off. So that was amazing. But it says, "Start it now, Deb. We really need help out here." Talking about you not feeling comfortable, right, creating a program or a training or anything, but that's what that part was too. So, I
That's
mean,
sweet. Yeah, I
and when
appreciate
you're
that.
ready, yeah.
I know that people like, so when we talk about it as clinicians, we follow the
Mhm.
ACA code of ethics, right? And so the code of ethics is like you shall not practice in areas that you are not experienced in. And
Yes.
so although I do have a lot of experience in terms of like treating ADHD, I treat almost everyone I treat has ADHD, and not because I diagnosed them, because they came to me with it, right? So
Yeah.
they have found me. But I do think like I'm collecting that information. I wanted to make sure I went through at least my second training in my ADHD CCSP before I started something. So
Mhm.
I do plan to start soon. I'm also, I'm a PhD student right now, so I take this very seriously. My information, the information that I say, is always going to be we think this right now, right? Like, so our research is, once again, every 12 to 1500 papers a year. This is a highly researched topic. Okay, so it's changing all the time. So right now, in this moment, on February 28th of 2024, this is what I think the information is. Okay, so I'll do my best guess, but with anything in social science or anything in a lot of different sciences, we are only as strong as our statistics, right? And our statistics can only measure so much in terms of variables. So there's a lot of different things that are happening with variables right now because of COVID, right?
Damn
Lots
it,
of different
COVID.
changes. Lots of changes in people because of COVID. Lots of
Right,
changes
yeah,
in children because of COVID, right? And so
right.
we almost have to take that whole group of people that were affected by it and push them aside and say, is that because of COVID though? Not
God,
because
that's
the disease itself, like the sickness itself, but
right.
because they were affected by the social stuff that was going on and the worry and the fear and all of different things, right? So there's a lot of different variables that are included there. But I love like being able to psychoeducate people, right? And so being able to say, like, interpret kind of like sometimes when you read doctor speak, it's really frustrating. Even me reading the doctor speak, and I am getting my PhD, so I read a lot of research papers, and I'm still like, okay, that's what it means. They're saying it in jargon that is really difficult to interpret, but I am trained to interpret it. So I listen to mostly PhD level podcasts, like so when I'm getting this information, I'm trying to interpret it in terms that like people understand. Like
Yeah.
this is a lot of this is not relatable to read. It's hard to say, like, but putting it in examples is something that I've just become really good at, and like taking things like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like for ADHD, it's also relating cognitive behavioral therapy to the fact that we have been brought up with a life of shame and guilt for making mistakes every single day. We are constantly too much or not enough. We never fit in anywhere. We are always odd. There's always something that we did that we regret doing. We regret doing it in the first 15 minutes, and we forget about it, we do it again, right? That's our working memory and our executive function issues.
Damn. I'm sorry. I say that and I chuckle because I could talk to you for hours just listening to you talk
Sorry.
about a
Sorry.
lot of this stuff. No, 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 don't be sorry. Now, I say
Uh,
that as a good thing
I
because,
know.
and again, that everyone who is listening to this are getting something from this, and that's why I love doing the Dispatchers Roundtable and everything, because of these powerful conversations and stuff that sometimes people don't talk about. And then they end up watching it, and then there's emails coming like, how do I get a hold of these people, how do I talk to them? So this is a really good thing. Now, moving on to the next question here for Jeremy, and again, as we've been doing, I want from the both of you, how do you think the lack of tools and maybe tips or tricks for managing ADHD in the dispatch profession impacts individuals with ADHD in this profession?
Yeah, I think, again, tips, tools, tricks, uh, they're short lived for those of us who have ADHD. If they are tried out at all. The traditional way, before people like Dr. Barkley, Deb, and people who are current with information, uh, none of those traditional things really ever helped me. And people that I've talked to, and I did a lot of meet and greets before we scheduled this with other dispatchers with ADHD, and same thing. It just doesn't work. Mainly because it doesn't last. It doesn't become a habit. And it's because it's hard for us to form habits, to form positive habits. So, I wish I could give some advice saying, doing this or doing that, but it's also very individual. My
Yeah.
ADHD is different than Deb's, that is different from somebody else's. So it's difficult to be able to put, a list basically together and say, yeah, you should try this, this, and this. Best advice is figure out what works for you. If it's job aids, if it's, putting stuff out on your position, as cheat sheets and stuff like that, do it. Find out what works for you, and do that.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like anything, in the sense that there's a lot of trial and error, right, for a lot of different things, and which you end up, becoming not only comfortable with, but that just really, you dial in and it works for you. That's what you stick to. And, as just the way you're saying it, for others, your situation is going to be a little different. So, no, that's good. Now, Deb, same question, but also, if there are any tools or tips or tricks or anything that can help manage it in this profession, what are some of those, Deb?
Okay, so when you say like nothing sticks, right? And so I resonate with that completely, trust me. But what I think you need to understand is that as long as you make something fun, it's gonna stick. Okay, so
Hmm.
you have to make it
Yep.
fun. Okay, and so that sometimes that means changing it. Okay, one thing that happens for people with ADHD, a lot of times we're disorganized in terms of like calendars and stuff like that. I have like 5 Google calendars, and also a paper planner. Sometimes I don't open my paper planner for months, and and that's when that self judgment comes into place. I failed something again. Nothing sticks, right? And so that's something that like we have a lot of shame and guilt about, is that we can't stick to anything. We're not committed. We don't have that self-discipline. And in fairness, it's our brains that don't have it. We don't make that choice. There are several different breakdowns that go on in your brain, and I can go into all the medical terminology and the neurology of it if you want, but it's just going to confuse everybody because it's in so many different areas of our brain that we're going to be like, okay, I got lost. I got lost on like basal ganglios, all these things. So what I'll say is, as long as you're making it fun, you will remember to do it because you're going to look forward to it. So you're going to
Mhm.
say, Andrew Huberman is like someone that I follow, and he's really more of an ophthalmologist that's works for Stanford. He does podcasts. I'm not, Huberman Lab. I'm sure a lot of people are fans of him, but he is famous for really researching how the brain works, right? Like, how do I make it happen, right? And so he talks about smart goals, setting smart goals, but a lot of people talk about SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and timely, right? And so a lot of people talk about SMART goals, but what he said is your brain won't recognize it unless you write it down every single day. You got to write it down, and that's when your brain's going to say, "Oh, I have to write down my SMART goal today," and then in 3 months, it'll probably happen because I'm going to work through it every day, and my brain's going to recognize that, right? And so your brain does things that you would be like, I didn't know that. It didn't tell me it was going to do that. Like, and I'm not controlling that. And so how am I doing that? And you're going to catch that throughout your life, right? But one thing is like the pretty colors, right? Color coding things that Jeremy said. That's important for us. We are stimulated. We're also those people that buy planners, paper planners with the big, like the sticky notes everywhere, and then it'll just like mold into wherever it sits, and we forget that it exists, right? And so that's called it's what we call object permanence. Okay, so when something's sitting in something for a place for so long that we're like, where is that thing? I forgot it exists. Like, where is it? And it's sitting right in front of me the whole time. So in order to do that, one trick I do with like planners is find like the, I don't know, national day of the day and write it in each day, or the word of the day, write it in each day. Learn something, stimulate yourself. What is like the song that came out this day in history? Like, who was born on this day in history? What's the horoscope today? I don't care what it is. Whatever you're interested in, write it down on the top of your planner. Okay. Every single day, that's going to be something new that's exciting that brings you back to your planner. Okay. And if you put these skills in place, you will stick to it. And then there's going to be times where you don't. That's why we don't get planners that have numbers and days in it already. We get the empty planners. And then when you go to the next page the next week and you didn't fill out the past 3 weeks, there's no guilt. There's no reminder of I don't follow through with things. You just go to the next week and you fill in your planner and you say, okay, anyway, this week, and these are my goals for the week, and this is what I'm going to do, and you can have it done. The other thing I would say is free dopamine for planners, and a planner is a skill for people with ADHD. So planners, free dopamine is going back through your day and adding what you did instead of what you were supposed to do. Don't write down what you're supposed to do that day. It probably won't get done. Go back and add everything that you did. I'm going to guarantee that you're going to go back through your day and be like, wow, I am powerful. I've done a lot, okay, that you forgot about. Oh, that's right. I did handle. Oh, that's right. I did talk to that person. Go back and, put in your half-hour time slots or whatever. I do recommend paper planners for every one of my clients. This is important. Russell Barkley will also tell you, keep a notebook in your pocket with a pencil, write things down. Write it down. You will forget. People will be in the middle of a conversation and be like, I have a dentist appointment at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And then you're like, checking out? Like, I will forget it. I have dentist appointment tomorrow. Dentist appointment. What did he just say? Right? Like, and if you don't write that down in the moment and you're going to be rude and write something down, you're going to be like, I have ADHD. I have to write something down. Hold on. Right? Like, and then you come back. Right? So, just a couple of tricks. There's a lot of different skills I could talk about. I just don't want to take too much time. I just hope that helps.
No, that is good. That's one main one, and I can imagine a lot of people that are watching this again, whether it be live or in the replay, that they're going to be taking a lot of these notes because this is really good information and information that people want and need. And so, as we're going into the wrap up of this episode, as we're going on about an hour and a half, but I
Sorry.
seriously, I could continue listening to all of this because this is, again, like I said, this is good information and information that people need and maybe have been wanting to hear, have been wanting to look for, but when they go look for it, it's not explained or interpreted in a way that it's not high level is what I'm getting at. So like the stuff that you guys have been talking about, I mean, it's good information and complex, but you're putting it in a way that anyone can really understand and take in and realize like, oh, like there's more that can be done, or there's more that I can do, there's more that I can learn, and I'm really understanding this. And also people will probably share this off and be like, okay, you've got to watch this because this is making so much sense. So I thank the both of you for being on here, but I want to ask the both of you as well as we're going into the wrap up of this round 38, which has been an excellent one. And of course, only if you feel comfortable, but for anyone who might be kind of on the fence about seeking some sort of help or wanting to go, come forward, not to us, that's not what I mean, but to be able to go to get a diagnosis and feel kind of comfortable doing it, what maybe is some advice that you can give, maybe even kind of looking into your experience when you decided it's time, what would you tell others? Jeremy, we'll go with you.
Um, you know, do your research. If you're going to do it, make sure you find somebody that is going to, evaluate you properly, and that you can build a trust with. Be 100% open and honest. I didn't find it, scary when I went and got diagnosed. If people want resources, I'm on Facebook. They can always message me, and what I have, I can give. Deb is the expert here on this, so she probably would be able to do a much better job. But as a peer too, if they just need to talk, we can talk on Facebook Messenger, and I would do what I can to make them feel comfortable about, the decision of going to get evaluated.
Excellent. How about you, Deb?
I would say a couple of things. It really depends on what state you're in, who you're looking for to diagnose this. It depends on state laws is sticky about the ability to prescribe medication for psychostimulants comes down to a special kind of license for certain kinds of doctors. In Connecticut, our physician assistants don't treat psychiatric disorders typically. Sometimes they work under a psychiatrist, but typically they don't. In other states, I'm not sure how that works, but if you're looking for an ADHD diagnosis, you're saying to yourself, like, all this stuff is resonating and it's a problem. I'm having a problem with these things. Okay. It's not just that it happens once in a while. This is every day. It's really frustrating me. I'm letting myself down. I feel like I'm letting everybody else down in my life. I don't know what I'm doing. And I think I need help. That's when you want to go and see a psychotherapist, right? And so therapists can include licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists. That's a level of therapy that's a clinical, right? And so aside from that, you have the medical providers, okay? And so then it would start with like a psychiatric APRN, and then it would oh, I'm sorry, I skipped this poor psychologist. There's so you have your clinicians, I'm sorry, the licensed clinical social worker, licensed professional counselor, but then you also have PsyDs, which is a PsyD is like a psychologist with kind of like a PhD, but it's a clinical degree. Okay. And then you also have a PhD. They do not prescribe medication. PhDs do not prescribe medication. Okay. Medical people prescribe medication. Okay. So everyone that's a PsyD or a PhD or an LCSW, LPC, or a LMFT, they can diagnose you if they're comfortable, if they have a specialty of ADHD. That's what you're looking for. Okay. So I have a specialty of ADHD. I'm only comfortable once in a while. I'm sorry, after a while, when I see someone with ADHD and I've gotten to know them, and I can give them the so say it's an adult, it's an assessment that they can complete, and I make my determination clinically there. I will still refer them to a psychiatric provider, medical provider, who's going to then do their own assessment and decide whether or not they think that person has ADHD, right? And so I guess, sorry, it was a long answer, but
No,
but
this is good.
so yeah, so if you look online, there are so many telehealth providers. Okay, we are out here. We're working from home and we are happy doing it. Okay, and I think that my clients in therapy, they're fully engaged. We do well in treatment, especially adults with ADHD. They do well in treatment, stimulating. We have good conversations. So don't be afraid to do telehealth. Don't be afraid to ask about it. Ask the person, have a consultation with them, ask them, hi, I think that I'm concerned that I have ADHD. It's really causing a problem in my life. Please let me know what I need to do, or if this is something you're comfortable talking with me about. And that provider will be very honest with you and say, I'm not comfortable treating ADHD. I'm sorry. You'll have to find a specialist. Okay. And so if you're looking for medication, once again, you're going to a medical provider. Okay. APRN, a physician assistant, or a medical doctor, MD or DO. Okay.
That is perfect. That is exactly what I was looking for, especially for those in the audience who are saying, this is going to be on replay and everything. So there are more folks that are going to be checking this out, and all of the excellent information that the both of you have provided and shared here. So how can people reach out to, if they even have questions or want to connect with you on social media? How can people get a hold of you? I know, Jeremy, you had mentioned already before, on Facebook or LinkedIn or anything like that. But either way, for the both of you, how can people get some more information?
Go ahead. No, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay. So I would say reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a social media. You don't want to know my personal views on things. So just go on. Trust me, Jeremy and Ricardo are on my Facebook. And probably like, this girl is hilarious, and also is she okay? Right?
I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, but if you can contact me on LinkedIn, and I cannot give you. Oh, one thing I wanted to catch and just reframe is when you said to give advice, I don't give advice. Okay, so doctors and lawyers give advice. I give guidance. Okay, and so
Perfect.
if you were looking for my guidance, and you are saying, hey, do you think this person's legitimate? I can check their licensure, their post-nominals. Those are all those letters behind our names. I can check those to tell you whether or not that person is a coach, or whether that person is a licensed professional that knows what they're doing. I can tell you that, but you'll have to give me some time to get back to you, especially if there's a lot of people that come and ask me. So just be patient with me, but I'll get back to each person as they come. And so LinkedIn, I'm Deborah Abbey, LPC, LLC. I put my first and last name on here so that people can contact me. You can also reach me at deb@deborahAbbey.com. So it's like the easiest thing ever. Deb@deborahAbbey.com. It's all spelled right there. So
Perfect.
like Deb. By the way, DeborahAbbey.com doesn't exist, and I'm the only person that exists in that company. So
Very nice.
that's just me. Yeah. Yeah.
And then Jeremy,
Yeah.
you as well. So you had mentioned Facebook already, but any other way if anyone has questions.
Facebook would be the best way. Jeremy Meyer, RPL. I'm on I think all the public safety dispatch related groups and stuff like that. But yeah, they can just private message me and I will get back to them, as soon as possible, usually the same day.
Sounds good. All right. Well, excellent. Thank you both so very much for being on this round and kicking off the Dispatchers Roundtable, round 38. But for the rest of 2024, I've got a lot of other things that are going to be coming up. So I will be right back here with the both of you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, thank you all for being here. And again, as I mentioned, for this kickoff of the Dispatchers Roundtable, it has been a while since I've done a DRT broadcast, and it's just because I have been busy as hell. So I apologize, but there's going to be a lot more coming up. I already have other rounds that are being planned out. So if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, please send me an email to wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can hook me up with a topic. If there's a specific topic that you're looking for that you would like to have discussed and go, just learn more about, please send me an email. Again, wttpodcast@gmail.com. And this live broadcast has been sponsored by InDigital, Leader Next Gen Core Services. And also, if you want to become a supporter of the podcast or follow us on social media, all you simply have to do is go to links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 i's.co/WTT podcast. And you'll find everything there: email, social media, where to follow, as well as the most recent episode of Within the Trenches podcast, the flagship show. And there's so many other things that you can find on there. The Imagine Listening book, if you want to be a guest on the flagship show, if you are a new dispatcher, current or seasoned, and or if you're recently retired or been retired for years, whichever, I would love to have you on the podcast to share your story. So hit me up with that as well. There's a button on there to schedule an episode. There are options for 30 minutes and 60 minutes, but I would just say to hit the 60 minutes because we're going to be recording an episode and the time goes by fast. So make sure to hit me up there. Again, that is links.co, and that's links with 2 i's, and then .co/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, LinkedIn Live, YouTube, X, as well as Instagram. And then for the flagship show, Within the Trenches podcast, you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.